this video, I want to continue the discussion of dynamic response in materials, and specifically looking at viscoelastic materials. One of the versions of dynamic response that we might think about, which is looking at material behavior changing over time, is called stress relaxation. And stress relaxation basically assumes that if we apply a static deflection to something, to a material, then over time the stress or the force required to hold it at that deflection will decrease. So meaning that if I take this rubber band as an example, and I were to stretch this, let's say by an inch or 2 inches or something like that, it requires a certain amount of force that I have to pull down on this rubber band in order to do that. Now, the principle of stress relaxation basically suggests that if I held this for a long period of time, over time, the molecular structure of the rubber band would reconfigure and rearrange slightly in order to reduce the amount of force that I have to apply to keep this held at the same position. So in that way, the material is adjusting to this new state of stress. And that can mean that it won't recover necessarily all of its original shape when I release the load that I'm applying to it. So if we think about this from a data standpoint, stress relaxation basically says that if I were to perform an experiment, for example, I would, in this case, measure time, and my input is going to be displacement or deflection. So if at some time I apply a static displacement to my material and then keep that constant for a period of time, the corresponding load to do that at the same time that the displacement is applied, I would see some load applied to my material, but then slowly over time I would expect that load to reduce by some amount and kind of lose some of its original resistance to that load being applied. So we can actually perform this experimentally and see what the results might look like. So an experimental setup like this, to perform this kind of procedure, looks something like this, where we have a sample of a viscoelastic material placed between two stationary clamps, and then we have a mounted clamp that is able to move up and down and apply either known loads or known displacements, kind of like you might see in like a tensile test. Now, this clamp then would apply some known displacement and measure the amount of resistance that it's recording at the load cell in order to compute what sort of stress is present. Now, in this case, the reporting here is in more or less in a stress-strain relationship over time, a stress value over time, but it's the same from the context of force. So what we see is that at the time that the load is applied, there is some given stress, and then that stress relaxes as the time proceeds onward. So in this way, the material is adjusting to this applied load and reconfiguring again to reduce the amount of force required to hold it at that position. All right, thanks.